certain venture capitalists are looking at certain things too, right? Some of them are only focused in the entertainment side. Some of them only focused in the financial services. And so
Yep.
you got to be real clear about understanding who you're talking to first and foremost, what they're looking for. So when you walk in the door, you can start to be able to kind of mimic what they look for and want.
I want everyone to just really kind of hear your story said, because to me, obviously over these last few years, we've gotten to know each other pretty well. We've done business with each other. You have a company, Culture Genesis, that me and my guys have invested in. And so many people, to me, I just find that don't really know how to go about getting investments, or you have an interesting background even pre Culture Genesis with Apple. So I really truly want to start there. Clearly, we all know Apple, huge brand. We're probably most of us are on an Apple product right now as we watch this. So if you could tell us, how does a black man, young man at the time from Houston, Texas, that went to a HBCU, North Carolina A&T, how did you make it to Apple and start your run?
Wow, Aggie pride, first of all.
Sure.
Man, great question, man. First, Jace, appreciate you having me on, bro. I should tell everybody before I get started. Jason is a genius entrepreneur and visionary, and has been just super helpful to me in my career, especially in the last probably 5 or 6 years for sure. So,
Appreciate that.
going back though, before all of this, as Jason said, I'm originally from Houston, Texas, Most City to be exact, home of so many creative entrepreneurs and artists. And so, for me, I wound up going to A&T, majoring in electrical engineering. And, it was a great decision on my part, really influenced by Jesse Jackson, believe it or not, bro. He came to
Oh,
my
okay.
school. I don't know if I told you that. Yeah, Jesse
Nah, I
came
didn't
to
know
the
that.
high school, bro, and he spoke and everything. And he was kind of like, so, he pulled all the brothers aside and he was like, so what y'all trying to do? And I was like, want to go to do engineering. And he told me about A&T because I had never really heard about it, in the whole Greensboro 4 and just everything the school stood for. So I went up there, checked it out, and man, I fell in love with it. So I wound up going up to
Yeah.
A&T. And I passed on like, Morehouse and a couple others because it was like a full straight program. It had to do a thing with Georgia Tech and all that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um so yeah, I did that, man, and it was a great thing, man, because I think the biggest thing I got out of A&T was it's nothing like an HBCU, bro. I think we got to support them even more. I'm trying to give back to A&T as much as I can because you get an experience to be like around your people, and you learn, how to like really collaborate. That's the big thing, right? How to like
Sure.
partner with other people, and
Sure.
and just kind of think. And more importantly, I think these relationships, man, I've been carrying them since college. There's so many people,
Absolutely.
from.
I think that's what's super dope for all about HBCUs, right? Like the camaraderie, the pride. To me, the older I get, the more I see it for real.
Yeah,
Because I went to Hampton, and left early. But so many people embraced me just on the strength of, yo, you went to HU, you went to Hampton. So I mean, there's so many levels to it, and obviously, when it comes to networking and jobs and people just kind of sharing resources, I think it's really cool. So I definitely think that's dope.
yeah. And so with that, I'll just say that we'll be giving back. We talk about it all the time. I mean, you think about like what we do now in music and the arts, man. It's like so much was being broken through HBCUs and still is.
Yeah,
So
absolutely,
we keep that
absolutely.
going. But no, after I graduated from A&T, though, I wound up getting a gig actually with Motorola, and then I wound up getting moved up to Atlanta. So I've been in the A for a minute. And then I got the gig with Apple, and with Apple, it was one of those things, man. It was a blessing because I
But
ran
how did
into
you
it on
get the
accident.
gig? How did you? Okay, okay. I'm sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'll tell you. So I got the gig. So I'm gonna tell people this is like the hustle, right? And this game doesn't stop. It's actually easier now than it even was then, which was like I was with, like I said, Motorola, and I went to, I was part of Nesby. National Society of Black Engineers. So I
Mhm.
went to their conference and I hustled it up, right? Because I was going there to actually do some recruiting, right? So they paid for me to go. And on the low, I was out there networking like we always doing. And I wound up talking to folks at Apple, and they were like, "Yo, like, you got some good skills or whatever." And we wound up just connecting there. And so from there, it's like, Apple wasn't anything like it is today, bro. Back then, it was just like
Sure.
Steve Jobs had just gotten back, and he was trying to do the iPod, and it was just like, but the one thing I'll take from that lesson and really has carried through my entire career, I've never been afraid to take risks on things that felt like they could be big, right?
Mhm.
And so like what was going on at Apple at the time that made me want to kind of get with it, it was like I saw how they were doing the iPod and they had just gotten a relationship with HP. And I was like, this shit
Okay.
is kind of dope, right? And I saw it was like related to music, and I was like, it ain't really
Sure.
popped yet, right? But it was like, I said it might have a chance. And so they had a gig for me to go in as a system engineer. So I wound up going in as a system engineer, working in, I started in the education division. So that's how I was able to stay in Atlanta. So I was able to fly back and forth from Atlanta to, Cali, and they had me traveling. And then the next thing I'll say that I took from my Apple experience was Steve Jobs ran that company, man, like really flat. He was really open to you, no matter who you were as an employee. You could send him suggestions and like
Mhm.
not be afraid to kind of like think outside the box.
Yeah.
And so real honest and true, man, I sent this dude an email blind, because I was just bold, you young dumb. I was
Yeah.
like, listen, I'm not afraid, right? I sent him a couple ideas, and real talk, man, he responded, and I was like, damn, and
You got that you got that
and
framed? You got that framed?
yeah,
Like
nah,
printed
got
out
him.
and
I
framed.
saved him. Nah, I saved him. I had to start referencing. I got a whole folder
Yeah.
of all my communications with Steve, man. But like, yeah, I hit
That's
him
dope.
up, and he was just like, yo, and he could tell, of course, he knew I was this young black kid, so I think it made him curious, too. So
Sure,
then I
sure.
started giving him these ideas about stuff that I think, we really could have done in like new verticals, like sports and different things of that nature. And it got to the point where he was like, okay, well, cool, why don't you try it? And literally I got it. I wound up getting a gig inside of Apple that was like a skunk works team. And I wound up leading the team, and it
Yeah.
wound up growing business in the company. And then they paid for my MBA. So, Apple that came live, bro. I mean, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. My family was entrepreneurs, but I wound up staying there way longer because of the way they treated me. They kept giving me like incentives to stay, stocks and
Hmm.
bonds, I mean, the
Yeah.
RSUs, what
Good
we
good
call like,
stuff. Good stuff.
yeah, the good stuff. And I mean, I was, yeah, I ain't gonna lie, man, I was getting stocks back when it was $26 a share, bro. So, when I was getting that, it just made it hard for me to leave. They call them golden handcuffs, right? So, but what wound up finally making me leave was Steve passed away in 2012. I wound up finishing my MBA from Emory in Atlanta, and I just kind of started feeling like there was something more for me to do. And but I was kind of like, man, what can I do? Where do I want to go with it? And then everybody knows in Atlanta, everybody knows Paul Judge. And so me and Paul and I were cool, and we were just talking about things, and I had ideas, and Paul was just like, yo, you got that dreamer's dilemma. And I was like, what's that? He was like, either you're gonna continue to take the safety of, you know, chasing somebody else's dreams, or you're gonna take the risk of chasing your own. And when he
Yep.
said that to me, it was like a challenge at that point, Jay. I was like, okay, all right. So yeah, so I took the risk at that point, man, to create my own startup. And Paul was one of my advisors. And so I did this one venture. It was cool. It can't lie. It wasn't that great. But then I wound up co-founding the other startup with Paul, which was the curators, and wound up coming Look Live. And that's
Yep.
when you and I got connected. Remember,
Sure, sure,
around
sure,
the whole Look Live, what it meant in fashion, culture, and that was
sure.
always the thing for me. What really made me want to get into this game as a whole and leave Apple was I just felt like it was just too many white people dominating it, Asian people dominating it, and there wasn't really any people of color building software for us by us. That was my thing, and trying to appreciate the culture and inspiring other young people to do it. So that's what really made me kind of make the jump. And so when we created Look Live, and I connected with you, and that's all we talked about was culture.
Absolutely.
how to connect to it, how to, really kind of use our influence in technology, because we see it in music, we see it in TV, we see it in film, but it's like you never saw it in tech. So that became my thesis, and so I appreciate, like, once again, all of your influence on me doing it. Because I just wouldn't be here if it would have been with a lot of our conversations.
Nah, for sure. That's what's up, and obviously, for you and I, we met at a great time, because we also got to trade off on resources in a sense, right? There were things that clearly that you gave me knowledge, information, new outlook, perspective, and vice versa. So that's to me what was dope and special about kind of us coming together. Me being a guy that's built my business, my career solely heavily in like culture, music, entertainment, fashion, lifestyle, things of that nature. So now, as you said, merging these worlds together, bringing tech and bringing culture, embedded tech in a sense, which is kind of obviously what led to the thoughts and ideas around creating Heavy Sound Labs. But before we even go that far, you mentioned Look Live. You guys started Look Live. That was a company, but I want you to speak on just why some people raise money, why some people don't raise money. Some of the challenges around being Black and raising money, things that we can do to push ourselves. Because I feel like that's the conversation that a lot of people never really truly get to hear. Of course, you only hear it's hard for Black people to raise money. So okay, that's cool. It's hard to do a lot of things. Now, what's the roadmap to that? What better puts me in position to get there for it? Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted first to start that conversation to tell everybody that raising money is hard for everybody. I didn't know that at first, right? I've always kind of like you, Jay. I heard, and I was like, yeah, it's gonna be hard for you as a Black man to raise capital, and of course it is. But I'm gonna be real with you, man. I don't care who you're, white, Asian, whatever. It's hard raising capital in a lot of ways because it's an unnatural thing, right? Think about it. You walking up to a multimillionaire or venture capitalists who have millions of dollars, and you coming to them saying like, hey, I got a dream and I want you to give me millions of dollars for it. And they looking at you kind of like, okay, now how big is that dream? And I think,
what do I get?
What I get in return, right?
Yeah,
I'm gonna give you that money and what I get. And then also Jay's like, how fast can I get it back? I mean, that's the other side of it. Like, how fast can I get it back? Yep. And is it going to benefit me in the meantime? So I think that's the reality, and we all just got to level set, starting there, right? And just understand that, this is not an easy game. This is a high stakes game. And, people, even though VCs are losing money every day, they still are very, very particular about, who they give their money to. And it is kind of a formula out there. And I didn't know that. And I think that's where I have to give Paul, he's an OG in the game. He started to teach me that part of it, right? This really is like a game of like, you got to say and do the right things to position yourself to get the money.
Sure.
And so, that's what I started to learn. And of course, that's what you and I started to talk about. So
sure.
let's double tap on that. So what does that mean? Okay, you say it's a lot to kind of, it's called pattern matching is what it's really called. And it's really the basis of what we were doing with Culture Genesis. Like, we knew that you can look at technologies that emerge and you can go chase every single thing out there. But the reality is that venture capitalists at different phases are giving money to different things, right? Whether it's like, you could say
trend forecasting, perhaps.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly what they're doing, right? Because you got to think about a venture capitalist perspective. They're sitting back getting pitched a lot of stuff, right? And so let's say they're getting 100 pitches. But then what they start to notice is like, there's a trend. I got like 30 pitches about, software as a service. Like, okay. And they all focusing on like, back in the time when everything was like Uber meets this, right? Everything was like, on demand service. So then they start kind of zooming in on that, right? And so then that's the real thing you got to start to understand, is that certain venture capitalists are looking at certain things too, right? Some of them are only focused in the entertainment side. Some of them only focused in the financial services. And so you got to be real clear about understanding who you're talking to first and foremost, what they're looking for. So when you walk in the door, you can start to be able to kind of mimic what they look for and want, right? I mean, that's just really what this is. It ain't, I wish it was more complicated than that, but it really isn't. The hardest part of it is actually having the traction in whatever it is you're doing, right? Because they look for four things, and I'll say this, and we keep recouping this, but they look for a good idea.
Yep.
They look for a good product. And when I say idea, I mean a market. Like they want you to be attacking a big market. They want to know that this thing can scale to millions and millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. And then they want to see if do you have a product, a good product that looks somewhat stable. And then thirdly, they want to know, does that product have traction? And traction can be quantified in a lot of different ways. Traction can mean, you got a certain amount of users, or traction can mean that you've gotten the product built to a certain state and they're like, oh, it looks good, right? And then fourth, and almost the most important thing is, do you have a good team? Who the hell is going after this with you? Are you going on this by yourself? Or do you have a crew of 3 or 4 people that look like, man, they're kind of smart, intelligent people trying to solve a problem? One thing that I'd say that for me, how I got to the ability to raise money the way I have been is, like I said, I did partner with Paul early. He started to teach me the game. You got to learn from somebody. You got to get, some real OG to teach you kind of the game, even if it's online, but you got to take the time and study and learn. So that's the first thing I did. And second, what I did is we went after, I wasn't afraid to fail. I failed. Let me say this. I tried to get in a Y Combinator, which if you all haven't looked, y'all should all go look it up. It's Y Combinator, Combinator. But it was like that premier program, right, for startups to get into, right? Like the Harvard of Y Combinator. And so I went after Y Combinator 3 different times. I failed twice. Third time I got in, right? And I went in with Paul.
I never
remember that?
Yeah. Okay.
Do that, right?
All right.
So the first time I went in there, I didn't even get an interview. Second time, I got the interview.
Okay.
And we bombed the interview.
Okay.
Third time, I went back with Paul, and I was like, I told Paul, like, man, I know everything we need to do and say, right? Once again, it's all about the pattern matching. I knew. And then Paul, with his background and a couple other people on our team, we knew exactly what to say, what to do, how to go in and present ourselves, which got us, into the program. And then once we got into the program, then we started meeting a bunch of other venture capitalists. And so I know a bunch of venture capitalists. And so, I actually wound up having a chance to even go work for a venture capital firm too, right? As what they call entrepreneur in residence.
Yep.
So I've been on the other side of the table. So I don't need anybody to tell me what they say. I've been in a room when they know what they say.
So pause right there, right? Because I even see in the comment bar on the side, people having side conversations and all of that. But I think that's like such a critical part, right? A critical point, rather. The fact that you prepared yourself, like you said, you lived on both sides of the table. You were the guy that went and got the door slammed 1 time, 2 times. It happened the 3rd time, and then further down the line, you actually went and became a entrepreneur in residence at a VC firm. So now, to me, I think that that's the real reality, right? Not so much that it's, well, I mean, like you said, it's hard for anybody to raise money. I don't care in where, right? You go to the bank anywhere. It's hard to raise money, period, right? But just the reality that I think a lot of us really don't know the steps that you really have to take to politically, relationship-wise, position yourself. The same way that, not to use these terms, but if you want to play baseball, you got to go to certain programs, right? You got to go to certain leagues, certain schools. If you want to play basketball, you're going to play AAU with certain coaches and certain things. It's no different on this side, right? You got to prepare yourself, understand what it is, not assume, but really dive in and educate yourself and get your hands dirty and climb up that ladder the same way we do in any other sport. Same way if you're a rapper, right? If you're a manager, you got to go to the same open mics. I need to get the Genius plug. I need I need a certain plugs, man. Yeah, so it's the same thing. And to me, like I say to everyone, I just want to help project this information, get information out there, and tell a whole story, you know,
Yep.
because we have the heavy crew, which I'm building. And the reality of it is everyone's not going to have a job in the music business. You know,
Nah.
it's just a fact. I'm sorry to say that, you know. And to me, I feel like, yo, what is at what point do you pivot? I think that so many people keep going forward, and I'm looking up and I'm like, yo, it's 20 years in now. You're still doing the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could have pivoted and went a different way and probably actually gained a lot of success throughout this time for real, you know?
Yeah, I was going to say one other thing to your point, Jay. I don't want to miss this. I just heard this recently. You know, we've unfortunately lost a lot of people in the last year, man. It's been crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody knows about Kobe passing away. And Kevin Hart was telling a story. I heard this from Kevin Hart of all people. He was talking about how they were in Philly and they were in a high school basketball camp. And Kevin was like joking. He was like, "Yo, I'm in this basketball camp and Kobe comes through." He was like, "Yo, I'm that shit because I'm in this camp with Kobe."
Yep.
And he was like, "Yeah, Kobe was in there, and I even tried to check him up a couple of times. And he did me dirty, but I was hanging with him."
Yeah.
And finally, towards the end of the camp, the coach was like, "I want y'all to understand something. Kobe been wearing y'all out, and he's been doing his whole camp with his left hand to practice on his left hand."
You idiots. You didn't even notice the guy's only playing lefty right now.
He played over you with his left hand,
That's
bro. He did that
hilarious,
whole
man.
camp with his left hand. And I only bring that up to say, like, man, like Kobe, like that work ethic, man. That dude was like that in high school. And he understood that sometimes you got to just really focus on the fundamentals. You got to study the best. That's why he had that video detail, that whole series about how he would break down Jordan and everybody. And I'm not to say like, we are going to get that success, but there is something to be learned that, to your point, I think is the next part of this thing, Jay, is like learning when to pivot. Like it's difficult. I'm not going to sit here and act like to anyone listening and even to myself that it's been easy, but I had to pivot. I had to learn like along the way to kind of like, okay, this kind of worked and this didn't work. So let me make this adjustment. And, these adjustments have brought me to where I'm at. And I'll say here, to everyone, like I'm not where 100% where I want to be, but I know without a shadow of doubt, I'm like in the direction and stratosphere where I know we're gonna hit it really big, right? And so, these things have been levels. There's just levels to these things, and shit, Jay, you've been a part of me leveling up. You've been with me as I level up. That's also I can share with everyone. That's probably a reason why you've been able to invest with me. We've been able to grow together, and I think that's the thing that everyone has to kind of look for. How am I growing? How am I leveling up? What adjustments am I making? We can call them pivots, we can call them whatever you want to label it, but you got to keep growing, and that requires, like someone I see in the comments, like just a self-awareness, right? You got to be aware of who you are, where your deficiencies are, how can you meet those deficiencies? And then how do you partner with people? This is the most important thing for me, is how do you partner with people who help you with your deficiencies? You know what I mean? People, if you've got blind spots and things you ain't so good at, you got to find the people who help.
Which is, like you said, that's team building, right? And I think that lots of times traditionally in hip hop, we've pretty much come from like a neighborhood perspective. You know what I mean? Like, hey, this is me and my friends, this is what we're doing. So now we're building together. We're building Grand Hustle. We're building whatever this movement is together. Even though that's really the sweet spot with Grand Hustle is myself and T.I., we came together on business terms for real. Both being young and recognizing like, hey, he has talent and I can contribute something to him and he can help me get where I want to get, and vice versa, and of course through that, through us coming together, we became friends. And I think that so often when it comes to team building, people don't really have much diversity in their teams for real. Like you said, it's really, hey, we're friends. Hey, we're right here with each other. This is easy. Hey, help me. And so many times you hear people, complain about the efforts not being evenly matched. Like, hey, I'm doing this and this is my partner, and it's like, yo, you're dragging someone along versus truly coming, and this is back to the heavy crew, like truly saying that people could meet each other right here on this platform online, not know each other, but really come together and create something in a real way. because you're complementing each other, you know, skills and efforts and just seriousness alone. A lot of people, you know, just are not evenly yoked, you know, when it comes to partnerships and teams.
Can I add to that, Jay? Because you said
Absolutely.
not evenly yoked. I'm gonna tell y'all a little secret that I think helps you find partnership. You know what you should go do? Find somebody who's already failed before. Find people that's already been out there trying it and like running into their own walls. And then what happens is they kind of made that self-awareness thing that someone mentioned before. Like a lot of times they start to realize, like, dang, like I can't do that part that well. So like right now, you know, my business partner that you all can't see, his name is Sean Newsom. So Sean and I are complementary characters. Really, we are. Like he's way more, you know, comfortable to be introverted and thinking. But he's very, very smart guy, you know, and I feel like I'm fairly smart. We both still technical, but he comes from it from a different angle and we're able to communicate. And I think the other thing that you got to find is why the failure is important is when people have failed, then they start to have a level of humility, right? Because see, what happens oftentimes, I saw somebody saying, it just doesn't happen in music. I like, no, it happens in every industry. See, when people start
Every industry, man. You don't know, like, you
just gotta find people they've made their own share of mistakes. Then they kind of get to be a little humble. They start to feel like, okay, maybe I don't know every damn thing. You know, it's like, well, maybe I can find somebody who can like know what I don't know. You know, somebody who's better at marketing or somebody who's better at the business, the books, or you know, it's just all different sides of business to be successful. You know.
Absolutely. So Joseph Simbe says, how do we practice pivoting to gain experience and knowing when to pivot? You know, I think that's bam, right there where you're at, right? And the reality when we talk about educating ourselves, like yo, to me, it just baffles me sometimes how we're in the information era. You know, we can consume information via YouTube, via a book, via a podcast, via a documentary, you know,
documentaries,
you know, documentaries, you know, and to me personally, I read when I was in the 12th grade, I read a book by Reginald Lewis. Some of you guys may know him, some of you guys may not. Reginald Lewis, incredible Black entrepreneur, credited for doing like one of the first $1 billion deals, you know, in America as a Black man, you know. So I read this dude's story when I was in the 12th grade. He has a book that he wrote, unfortunately passed, but it's a book called Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? All the fun. Yep. And in this guy's story, reading his story, this guy was like the pivot master. Like he just kept cutting and growing. So I tell people all the time, if you want to learn, you have to do stuff like this for real. Obviously, it's great if you can find a mentor that has some success and you can talk directly to, but consume the information and listen to people's stories for real. You listen to someone's story that's successful, you're going to see that this wasn't their first thing that they attempted and they were successful. You know what I'm saying? So like you said, it's back too. Most of the time you've tried something, you failed, you came back to the table, you made some adjustments and you tried it again. You know, you didn't give up. You kept learning from your experiences until you finally got there. So I'll say to everyone, man, consume the information, study other people that have stories of success that are places that you want to be. Read their stories and you're going to see it ain't easy. And you're going to kind of pick up like, oh, okay, I have to pivot. I have to know when to get up. Like you sitting there too long. It's like being on the Titanic, right? You can't sit on the Titanic too long and now you don't get a raft. You got to get out of there, man. You got to get a raft.
I was going to say Steve Jobs called it. He was always saying, you know, I want everyone to learn how to see around corners. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean, Steve? And he would say two things, see around corners, and I want you to zoom in and zoom out. Right? Oftentimes we can't see the forest for the trees, right? Whether that's what's going on in the industry or what's going on in a relationship, you know, you gotta like have times of reflection. So what I mean by this is that, as you were saying, Jay, you gotta like study the habits of a lot of these people. One of the things that kind of, I'm gonna take it a little left here, you start to learn is like these people, a lot of these people that we deem as successful people, they have a lot of interesting habits where they meditate, how they, you know, take time to read. And you'll see that they put a lot of time into the cerebral part of their life that we don't really know about because it's all tucked away and quiet. But those are the things that give them that chance to kind of have those moments of reflection, which then helps you make the pivots, right? Because then you start to realize like, yo, this ain't serving me well, right? And you got to kind of say, now, what's the next thing to do? And, like I said, I'm gonna give Steve one more thought. A lot of people think he was like a genius for like understanding technology, but to me, he was a genius in the way he structured the company. He knew kind of like what to do with people and how to structure an organization to be agile and to iterate on products quickly. And it's so much so that a lot of people don't know this, that when he was passing away, before he passed away, found out he had cancer. He hired in this guy named Joel Podolny. He was the dean of the business school at Yale. And he brought this dude in and he was like, listen, I just want you to study the company and I want you to start writing case studies about why we do what we do. And so, Apple at the time had nothing written down on the wall or none of that. It wasn't that kind of company. Yeah. So dude was running around trying to understand, and he had to learn the hard way about how people did stuff because it was just never written down. And then he started making these case studies, and then he started bringing up people like me. I wound up going into Apple University, and they literally started making us learn why we do what we do. And it was like amazing to think about, like one of the principles was like, being able to see around corners and understanding and like how to anticipate market direction. And those are the things that take time to learn. And you can either have a mentor to kind of help you there, or you really can just take your time and read up so many great books about it. But I do feel like a lot of it comes down to being like thirsty for the knowledge and finding it, and it'll come to you and it'll help like frame your thoughts,
Yeah, nah, totally, man. It's a good conversation going on, some dialogue on the sideboard about mentorship, finding a mentorship. Alicia Howard says that people are charging big money for mentorships out here.
That ain't a mentor.
That's a hustle. That's a hustle, Alicia. That's not really a mentorship program. To me, I'll say this, right? I called a guy earlier this morning that I consider one of my mentors. Mentorship, I think it should be like mutually beneficial, exactly. A reverse or mutual mentorship, So for anyone that I look towards and I value their opinion, their thoughts, their experience, I have some things going on. This is a guy that I respect. He's an entrepreneur, has been doing it for a long time. So I called him to kind of run some ideas by him, right? But in just saying that, I always make sure that when I come knocking on his door, I bring a gift. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, it's like when someone comes to your house, right? You coming over, it's nothing like that person that comes to your house to visit for dinner and they have a bottle of champagne or a bottle of your favorite, whatever that is, something to offer. Now it's just like, oh man, I love seeing you. It's all smiles when I see you, So I think that in general, we have to understand that mentorship should be mutually beneficial. A lot of people that are older and have success, you have to find their spots that they don't have as much success in, and kind of feed them some information. A lot of times they don't know what's going on in the streets, so I'm gonna give you the information of what's going on in the streets. You give me the information what's going on over there, in the other world. So just to really say that for real, like that's just a thing that I practice myself.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Jay. So it's funny. It's real. So just for everybody here, Jason and I, we talk all the time, but we've never talked about this. But I'm gonna tell you how we do the same thing. We didn't even know it. So one of my mentors, super successful in business, and like you said, a lot of times they're gonna be a little older than you, have some wisdom and whatnot. And the thing that you can provide to your mentors, so let's talk about how do you get a mentor and how you maintain a mentor. Okay, let's talk about how to get one. So how to get a mentor, a lot of times you have to identify someone that you think is successful and literally ask them to be your mentor. Like you say to them, like, absolutely. Hey, I admire what you're doing. I'm trying to get in this space, and, I know you're a super busy person, but like, hey, whenever you have time, I would love to just be able to, get some of your time on the phone, via email, whatever it is. And then what I do, to your point, Jay, the second piece of this is that I started sending, I even did this to Steve Jobs, I did this to Tim Cook, who was a current CEO. Mm-hmm. You know what they love me? I would start sending them shit, because when I was getting my MBA at this time, I was sending them stuff that I felt like would be relevant to Apple's business. Like, I know
Absolutely.
they reading stuff and doing stuff on their own,
All day long.
but at the
Yep.
end of the day, one man can't be everywhere. So I was like sending them information like, yo, like, have y'all seen this? And I would give like a one-line thought. Because anybody at a high level don't want a lot of words, right? So that's the
Yep.
last thing you want to do. Don't send them no wordy email. Like, don't
Yeah.
send them wordy anything, but be very direct and give them some feedback of like, hey, here's what I see, here's what's going, right? So I would do all those kinds of things, to your point, Jay, to kind of help enrich that opportunity for some sharing, what's going on in my world, what's going on in your world.
Boom.
And
Boom.
it became such a, lifting to where now they're looking for you. They're calling you, on things like, hey man, what do you know about this? And
Yeah.
one last thing I'll say to this thought is like, as you all are out here, and this is what you're actually doing, Jay, I didn't even think about this. So funny. Um, when I was getting my MBA, they said you should actually get what they call a brain trust.
Mm-hmm.
You should have 100 people in your network that
Mm-hmm.
that can bring you some kind of benefit on some subject matter. And you should be able to give them benefit on another subject matter, right? So if you know somebody, you need a guy or two that that are good lawyers, doctors, whatever. So whenever you got questions, you go to that person immediately, and then they'll come back to you with something immediately too, because they know you're an expert in something else. And that's the way you kind of really build and grow, right? And so I think that's what heavy crew is, right? When I think about it,
Yeah.
it's that
Yeah.
it's the
Absolutely.
network. So
Absolutely.
it's
It's definitely
definitely,
community, it's network, and it's the thought of also scaling out mentorship, So people in here are saying, hey, how do I get a mentorship? Really for real, I got mentors that I never met before. You know what I'm saying? Just being that I watched them, I
yep,
watched them, I studied them, I listened to their conversations. Robert Smith's one of my great mentors,
yeah,
never met the dude before a day in my life. So I think that's something that's also real, just identifying people that you want to study. So like you said, the higher the levels these people on that you're admiring, they got a lot of options, they have a little bit of time, they have a lot of things on their itinerary. So now you truly gonna have to perform at the top of your game. So once again, they feel like you guys are really trading off on information. You're turning them on to something because they know what they can do for you. When you already got money,
right.
I know what I can do for you,
I know
right? It's a million
exactly.
people trying to see what the money looks like. You know what I'm saying? Like, but you're still a person of a business person. So you're
Right.
still like, okay, now who can pour some of this other stuff that I'm not seeing into my system as I give you what you're looking for. So just wanted to touch upon that.
I'm gonna drop one more knowledge piece, Jay, because
Okay,
what you
cool.
said something that struck me. So there's a really good book that we can make sure y'all go check out. It's a short read. It's called Still Like an Artist. And in his book, what it talks about is what Jason was saying. Like, on a lot of levels, you can have a mentor that you never meet. And then the other side of that too is that the people you meet that inspire you and you're thinking about what they do, go find out who are the people that inspired them. That's the other,
Yeah, that's
key,
real.
right?
That's real. Yep,
Like
what they
real
look at.
talk.
Yep.
Yeah, man. It's like, so you kind of like, so for me, it was like, yo, Steve Jobs is like one of my guys, right? That I had in that pedestal. Then I started to learn about the people who inspired him. You know who inspired
Mhm.
Steve? Walt Disney,
Yeah,
Edwin Lamb, who was the guy who
sure.
created the Polaroid camera. So
Yep.
when you go read those about those guys, you start reading like, oh shit, Steve stole that shit from them. You
Exactly.
start
Yeah,
realizing
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
ain't
So,
nobody
so,
that
so,
original,
so, so,
bro.
so that's like music, right? When producers come in the game, I always say that, like, who's your favorite producer? If they're sampling, identify who they're sampling the most. Identify that. Certain producers always go to, like, Kanye, all these different producers at a certain stage, they laid on Roy Ayers or this one or that one.
Right,
And it's like,
right,
really
right.
go to that source and really study that source for real, because back to your point, that's really some of the people that they learned from for real. So, it's kind of, if you want to get closer to originality, you got to go above. You can't, once again, just study the first layer. You got to go some layers back so that you can really get those tools for real and resources that inspired them to be who they were.
Sure, sure.
Agree with that totally. So let's go a little forward.
Okay.
Let's talk about All Deaf.
Okay.
All Deaf was started in 2016, right? By
13. 13.
13. Well,
13.
2013 by Russell Simmons. They invested a lot of money into this company, and we got the opportunity to acquire it. Clearly it's been a brand. It's big on YouTube. It's big on Facebook. It's big in the comedy space. It's big in the space of music. Let's talk about that. How did that opportunity come about? How did you put the money together to go and buy this business from Russell Simmons?
That's a great question, Jay. I mean, it's like it kind of dovetails into everything we've been talking about just in life. Like, I don't think anything happens by accident. It's like kind of things find you as you're working. And so let's talk about what I mean by that. So when we created Culture Genesis, Sean and myself, we were able to create a venture that was 100% focused on, like, listen, we wanted to build something for the culture. We wanted everything we do to have that leaning towards people of multicultural audiences, African American predominantly, but anybody brown essentially. And so when we had that focus, it made things easy for us to go partner. Um, you know, when you were out there. So what we started to do, we were working with, as you know, Jay, we can kind of talk about it first and foremost, so everyone out there knows, I was able to, get this thing started, get some investors, as Jason said. And then, but what happened next is I was able to go back to Jason and Tip, particularly as two brothers who understood entrepreneurship better, probably than anybody else that we have been talking to that were, like, I would say, celebrity. Um, you know, so when we were able to partner, we went out there and we started with our first project, which was Trivia Mob. We got some traction with that. And then we started getting people wanting to partner with us. So like Kevin Hart and his group, LOL Network. And then we also had like Steve Harvey and on and on. And then we also started partnering with All Deaf. And so we were already working on a project with All Deaf. And we were going to do some great things with them. They actually had contracted us to actually do some work with them. And so Jay, we went over to the studio a couple times, or took Tip over there. So we were really going to be tight with All Deaf to begin with, but we didn't know what their financial situation was, right? So for everyone out there to know, like, money is not a cure-all for your success either. I want to say that up front. Like, they had $13 million that they had invested in the company, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be successful, right? Because there's tons of startups that burn through cash and don't find success. And so for different challenges and different reasons, they were failing. And so they actually wind up, failing. And then that's when we were able to acquire it. Now, how did we acquire it? We were just a little bitty startup. But what was going on at the time is that we were already in the midst of our own fundraising process. Things were going our way. And so what we did is we were able to go back to our current investors, which include Tip, Jason, Baron Davis is even in that crew. And we were all able to sit down and talk about what we felt could be accomplished with All Deaf and what we wanted to do for the culture. And we all had our own kind of interests in it. As Jason mentioned, All Deaf has comedy, music, poetry. And then we've also recently expanded into gaming and cannabis. And so with that, what we wanted to do was like really kind of partner and team up and go into it. So that's what we did. We got other investors along with this group. We made the acquisition in November. And what's crazy is Sean and I, when we created Culture Genesis with talking to Jason and Tip, Jay, remember our whole conversation was all about live interactive. Remember that's all we used to talk about, right? And doing it for the culture. Absolutely. Now you look up, that's all everybody's doing now.
That's all we're doing right now. So I mean, that's how it is. You have to be forward and look ahead. And now, of course, this quarantine has forced everyone to move faster, right? Forced everyone to get into the content space. The music business, streaming is down right now.
Yep.
In music, video streaming is up right now. So just kind of dropping in on the sidebar as well, conversations happening on the side. Perfect example for me, there was a time before streaming that people really made their money in the management side of the music business, So for me, I didn't really like being a manager too much. So I knew that this isn't my era right now. Management, let me go. And I went and created a cool Strivers Road with Hustle Gang, 3 other brands that I had equity in that I could build real properties for myself. Now the business is shifting back for record labels. I'm more of a record label guy. Now it's my turn to get back in the game, you know. So I think that a lot of people, you have to read the landscape and adjust with it. You can't go straight ahead full speed when a curb's coming up. You know what I'm saying? Like, and a lot of people, you know, you're so emotional, but I want to do this, I want to do that. And that's why a lot of times you're not going to be successful. Like you said, you got to look at the trends, you got to look at the market. You know, it's not about you. You can cut through, someone can cut through, but most of the times you're gonna bust your head open before you cut through, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what they say
Yeah.
in YC Jason, which is 100% to what you're saying. You gotta build or make something that people want. Like, it's a very simple thing to say that, but it really is so real because oftentimes we get caught up in our own dreams and what we think we want. But it's like, listen, you got to know what the people want. You know, that's what the culture is so rich. You know, you got to be paying attention. You got to be actively engaged with the culture, so you know exactly what people want, and then you go test it. You don't necessarily got to go blow your whole load right up front. That's what's so cool about everything being digital. Right now, you can take things digital and you can go create a little something, test it, get a few people liking it, then you can kind of scale it. That's why like something like in the music business, SoundCloud is so great, bro. You can take something, put it out there, put a little bit of marketing, just your own personal little network around it, see if people start to like it, you know, and that's the whole, you know, kind of, I think, thesis behind Heavy Sound, right? Is to be able to put stuff out there and
Absolutely.
test that market and let it
Absolutely.
scale.
Yeah. You got to use the tools that you have. Like you said, we have all of these resources now, you know, to look and see, hey, we put a record out on Tuesday. Let's see the traction, you know, let's see the traction before we start dumping money and all of this extra time, you know, into this record just because we think that this is the record. Let's see what the people feels. And as the people speak, now we'll put more resources, more capital, more efforts on this record, you know. So that is the difference between today's music business and yesterday's music business. You know, I have people in the comment side. I forgot one of you guys said, "Hey, why aren't people having platinum albums anymore?" An album is a way for an artist to tell their complete story and get their, you know, their whole thoughts out, and, you know, in a complete story for the most part. But we have playlists now. You know what I'm saying? So playlists is, to me, it's like going back to the 50s, to the jukebox era, to the 45-inch, you know, singles, and now it's a single driven business, you know. So you may have an album that has 10 songs on it, and the album might not go platinum, but you may have 4 songs off the album that goes platinum. You know, so the game is just different. You know, that's why it doesn't make sense for you to deliver an 18-song album anymore, like rappers did in the 90s. You know what I'm saying? That's why it doesn't make sense for you to deliver a song with 3 16-bar verses anymore, because, yo, the game has changed. Nobody wants to hear all of that. Get out of here. Like, you know, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd say to that point, to your point about the playlist is the new, you know, mixtape. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, the playlist gives you that chance to put stuff out there, test it in a digestible way. But I think to your point about storytelling, though, I want to make sure that people are clear that storytelling isn't dead. Storytelling is evolved, right? So, like, you know, like I remember Biggie, two album release, you know,
double album,
double album releases.
What?
Like people like, yo, that's gone, but it's not necessarily gone, because somebody who's doing it for a certain genre of hip hop is like Travis Scott. Look at what Travis Scott is doing. Like Travis Scott is like literally like painting pictures and telling a story in his own way. Now, whether you rock with his music is up to you, but you know, there's a group of people that rock with Travis because of what he does imagery wise, right? He's like out there staying in his lane. He's building out this whole, you know, virtual leveraging technology in a way that's like, it's really inspiring, right? I mean, so it's like everyone can do that in their own way and tell their own story, right? And it's out there for the taking, because all these things are right here on your own laptop and your phone. It's not like it's like rocket science either. It's just a matter of
putting in that work, man, preparing yourself, digging deep to understand, you know, the tools that are there to you, and learning the tools for real. That's the reality, you know. Like I always say also, a lot of times you'll see a producer with so much equipment and you haven't mastered any of it, you know, versus one producer with one machine, 2 machines, and it's like, yo, I know how to do everything with this machine.
I don't expect all creatives to be like, damn, I got to create all this on my own. Like, that's the whole partnership thing again. You got to find people who can help you tell your story. I think if I was a dope artist right now, I don't care if it was hip hop or even R&B, I would be thinking about how I could be telling my story like right now to the story of life of what's going on, right? This corona and this being quarantined. I mean, this, if I had that ability to like create from, you know, my vocals, bro, I'd be killing it right now. Cause I just think it's just so much opportunity to like paint vision and connect to people because everybody locked
Absolutely.
up. So it's like, yo, like, let me just speak to what we all feeling right now. You know what I'm saying? It could go viral. You know, it's just a matter of like who wants to do it. So
And so I was gonna say, and someone's gonna do it, right? So that's
yeah,
the exciting part
yeah,
too, is like really seeing like who's gonna do it. Like I see so many people try, yeah, I'm shooting content. You're talking about you're shooting content for records that you recorded prior. Whereas, like you said, now you gotta reflect the time. And that's what artistry is about. You know, that's what hip hop's about, you know, really reflecting what's happening, you know, within the streets, you know, around America and around the world today, you know.
and so I'll say that with the last thing, just so everybody out there knows, you know, because Jason is definitely a major investor, advisor of what we're doing over at All Def. All Def Music is going to see some evolving, so y'all should be looking out for what we're going to be doing there. There's going to be a lot of connection with heavy sound. I think one of the things that we really want to do is you're going to see that these heavy talks are going to always, they're going to be co-produced with All Def Music. You're going to start seeing them on all of our channels. So whether you go to All Def Music on Instagram, you'll see that it's there. All Def Music on YouTube. And so we'll be taking this content and, you know, kind of putting it there for y'all to engage on. But I think more importantly, Jay, I mean, we won't blow to all our ideas, but just be on the lookout for some cool stuff that we'll be doing to take from with heavy sound and All Def music. And that was one thing else. Quincy Jones said this. I was in a room. He said this. He says, listen, man, don't tell everybody that you're going to the moon. Just call them when you get there, bro. Just call them when you get there. So
yeah. That's Notorious Quincy Jones line right there.